So today we're going to be making pancakes. These are the thick pancakes, so they're not crepes or crepes. These are the thicker pancakes that we're going to be making. So you can see that I have got all my ingredients ready. So I've got my 200 grams of flour, I've got my baking powder and my sugar, salt, my large egg, and then I've got my milk already measured out. I've just got the cinnamon here, so you could use the cinnamon to add a little bit more flavour. You could even add some other different things like blueberries or raspberries into this, just to give a different texture and also just make them a little bit healthier. So you could also add some dried raisins. So any dried fruit could work really well with these as well. So have a play around with these and you could really get some great stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sieve my flour into my bowl. So first question for you as I'm sieving this, why should I sieve the flour? What's the purpose of sieving the flour? It's not just to get rid of the big lumps, there is another reason why we sieve the flour. Okay, so that is my flour now all sieved. Then into my flour, I'm going to add my tablespoon of baking powder. Do this over the bowl so that if you then get any extra, they go straight into the bowl rather than onto the worktop. And the baking powder is my raising agent today. I'm then going to put my tablespoon of sugar in as well. And just a pinch of salt, and that's just going to help with the flavouring. Okay. So I've then got my egg. So another question for you, how can we tell that the eggs are fresh? How can we tell that the eggs are fresh? And there's also something on the eggs that you get in a supermarket. I'm not sure whether you'll be able to see this, but there's a lion stamp there. What does that lion stamp mean? So all eggs in the UK have got this lion stamp. So what does that mean? So I've got my milk, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to crack my egg straight into the milk. And I'm just going to whisk that in there. So you're going to see that the milk is going to change colour. And there we go. Now it does say in the recipe that you could make a well with this, but actually if you just stir around with your whisk, and then I'm going to add in half of my milk. So before we add the milk, we would have added our cinnamon or any other flavouring that you wanted to at that point. Just going to add. So whilst I'm mixing this together, having another question. So we've already had, why do we sieve the flour? And and then we had how can we tell when the eggs are fresh, and what does the lion stamp mean on there. So one thing I want you to think about is, why do we store, or how should I store my ingredients? So any of the ingredients that we're using today, how should I store them, and why? Why do I store them in that way? So it's quite a thick mixture that you've got. And just continue to mix that until you've got no lumps left. So you've now got quite a thick mixture. If you don't have this thick mixture, you may need to add just a little bit of more flour. Do it a tablespoon at a time until you get the right consistency. So you can start to see some of the bubbles are beginning to appear as well. So why do the bubbles appear at this point? And then when I'm cooking it, why do I then see more bubbles appearing? So I'm just putting a low heat onto my frying pan, and I'm going to add just a teaspoon of oil. Whilst that's heating up, it's really good to just let this mixture just rest a little bit because you've worked it quite hard. What we're then going to do is use a soup ladle, and one ladle is then a perfect size. If you don't have a ladle, just a serving spoon would work. Means you might get slightly smaller ones, or you could use two of your just a dessert spoon and use two of those. But again, they may be very slightly smaller to what I'm going to be making now. Just allowing that oil to spread around a little bit. And then I'm wanting that pan to be hot. I don't want it to be smoking hot. Just make sure that you are getting it to a warm temperature. If it starts smoking, get it off the heat quickly and let it cool down, and then bring it back onto a cooler heat. If the oil gets too hot, don't put it under cold water. So make sure that you just take away the heat, and if it is really too hot and you splash cold water on it, you could end up with a very dangerous situation. If that then happens, just place a damp tea towel over the top, and that will remove any worries. So just got my ladle, and I'm just going to pour that straight in. Okay. Ladles at school are very slightly smaller, so they're a good size. These are much bigger ones. So slowly but surely that is going to start to cook, and you may again find that you get some bubbles coming up at the top. So there's that question again. So why do those bubbles come up as I'm cooking? So the other reason I'm only doing one at a time is because, as you can see, this is spread out as it's cooking. So now that the heat's really getting to it, you can start to see that it's stopped spreading as much. And you want to just leave it to cook for the moment. So you're going to know when it's ready when the top of the edge is really starting to cook, and this process will get quicker and quicker. Now as you turn it over, you're going to have to be very quick because the top is not completely cooked. And what you should see is it start to rise again, and again that's to do with the baking powder that we've got in there, so that's giving it its light fluffy consistency. So it doesn't need very long on either side, and in fact as the heat starts really getting through the pan, you may need to turn your pan down a bit until you've got everything at the right temperature. Make sure that you don't use your fingers, make sure that you're always using your fish slice. And there we have it, we've got our first one. So you can see that nice colour all the way through, and then we just continue on. I'm not going to add oil to every time that I add this. I'm just going to add the oil as and when I need it. So don't continue to add more and more oil. You only need that teaspoon, and in fact I might not need to add any more oil at all to the pan. So for the last pancake, I've turned it over and I've just turned the heat off because there's so much heat in that frying pan now. It's actually just going to continue to cook. And there we have it. So I've just moved that frying pan onto a cooler hob just so that it starts to cool down. I'm not going to wash that up quite yet. I'm going to let that all cool down. In the same way with the heat on the hob, please be very careful when you're wiping that down. Again, it's going to be really hot. So the questions that I have set for this video. So how can I tell when the eggs are fresh? And what did that little lion mark mean on it? How should I store the ingredients that I've been using today and why? Why do I sieve the flour? And then why do bubbles come up to the top as the pancakes are cooking? So why do I get these little bubbles here? What's happening? Good luck.